Hello. I will get right to rewriting this for you. Here is the rewritten text based on your requests. The air hung thick with secrets and the low hum of 100 whispered stories. Before you is a world not of heroes and kings, but of whispers and shadows, a world where the line between fact and legend blurs, a single flickering light in a sea of darkness, a place where a single night can change everything. We're stepping into the heart of an era lost to time, where a simple building holds more danger and wonder than any grand castle. So, dim the lights, silence the world outside, and prepare to enter a story that began on a night just like this. The rain had just stopped, leaving the cobblestone streets slick and shining under the weak light of the moon. The scent of damp earth and smoke filled the air, a constant reminder of the city's rough, untamed life. You were tired, your feet aching from a long journey, and the persistent rumble of a passing cart laden with root vegetables nearly knocked you off your feet for the second time. All you craved was a moment of rest and a warm drink. Finding a place to stop in this ancient city was not about looking for signs or directions. It was about listening. Past the clang of a blacksmith's hammer and the boisterous calls of a street vendor selling fresh river fish, a cacophony of human sounds rose into the night. It was a chorus of laughter, shouting, and a surprisingly passionate song about a mythical creature. Following the sound, you arrived at a building that looked as though it had been built by a tipsy craftsman, its wooden frame leaning precariously to one side. A faded sign hung over the door, depicting a crude image of something that could have been a flask, a wild beast, or perhaps an impossible combination of both. You push open the heavy iron door, and its hinges groan in protest, a long, mournful sound that seems to welcome you. The warmth and rich, complex smell of wood smoke, wet fabrics, old spirits, and roasted game envelops you. It is a powerful, almost overwhelming greeting. You found it. Inside, the low ceiling forces even tall patrons to stoop. The floor is packed earth, covered in a thin layer of sawdust in a futile attempt at cleanliness. There are no quiet nooks or private tables here. The atmosphere is either chaotic or non-existent, the latter only when the establishment is closed for maintenance. Your eyes scan the room and land on an empty spot at a bench near the roaring fireplace. You don't question the dark, damp stain on the wood. Around you, life unfolds in a chaotic tableau. Two men argue fiercely over a lost wager. Another is sleeping soundly, a soup spoon still clutched in his hand. Under a table, a stray dog gnaws on a bone as if it were the sole occupant of the room. And this, my friend, is just the beginning. You have just arrived, and the night promises to be one you'll never forget. The air is a heavy blanket, thick with the unmoving smoke that seems to rise only to hang just above eye level, refusing to escape through a chimney that might be blocked by something as mundane as a dead bird. The heat, the noise, all of it fades into the background compared to the overwhelming and unforgettable scent. It's a mix that no one would dare to put in a bottle. The first layer is the tangy, yeasty smell of old fermented grains which coats everything. Below that, the unmistakable aroma of 1,000 unwashed bodies, from humans, beasts of burden, and maybe something more. Add to this a hint of stale food, damp straw, and the faint sweet scent of cooking herbs, and you have a blend that assaults the senses. The crowd is a single, chaotic creature. Laughter explodes in one corner as a disagreement over a trading deal rages in another. A person nearby slams their mug down, spilling half the liquid, and no one reacts. A man at the next table stares into the void, a look of profound thought or complete confusion on his face. Someone sneezes, and the entire half of the room instinctively pulls back. Despite the assault on your senses, there's a strange comfort here. The room pulses with a raw, unfiltered energy. It's a place of community, just without the rules of hygiene and with an abundance of noise. You find your place on a bench, a bit wet, maybe a little tourist, but it's yours for now. The layout of this establishment is a testament to disorganization. There's no clear blueprint, no distinct bar, no cozy corners, just a haphazard spread of tables, benches, barrels, and whatever else could be used as a seat. The space feels both too crowded and too empty at the same time. The great hearth is the heart of the room, a blazing fire against one wall, a source of warmth, light, and a constant dose of smoke. Patrons huddle around it like moths to a flame, the most fortunate ones basking in its heat, while the rest make do with their drinks. The serving area is just a thick plank of wood, resting on 2 barrels, sagging under the weight of jugs and mugs. Behind it stands the keeper, a master of multitasking who pours drinks, shouts orders, and sends a glare to the person who hasn't paid their tab. There's no menu. You simply ask what's available, and the answer is usually a choice between a type of ale or a demand to be patient. A narrow, splintered staircase leads to the rooms above. A single boot hangs from a railing post, a possible warning. In the back, a sealed-off room might be used for storage, for games of chance, or for the final destination of anyone foolish enough to cause trouble. It's better not to ask. The walls are dark with soot, and the windows are covered with greasy hides, but somehow it all works. People know where to go, how to sit, and when to be loud. It's not organized, but it is deeply, profoundly alive. The true ruler of this place is not a royal or a dignitary, but the tavern keeper. They may not wear a crown, but their authority is absolute. A mix of a chef, server, accountant, and enforcer of justice, the keeper is a force of nature. If it's a man, he's likely built like a boulder, weathered and stern. If it's a woman, she's sharper than a blade and can quiet a room with a single look. They've seen it all, heard worse, and handled crises before the sun has risen. They greet their regulars with a nod,
newcomers with suspicion, and troublemakers with a swift and decisive response. Behind the bar, they hold all the information in their head: who has paid, who owes, and who has had enough. No records are needed, for a keeper's memory is sharper than any book. They set the entire mood of the place. When they're in a good mood, the room buzzes with energy.
When they're in a bad mood, you'd better drink your fill quickly and keep your jokes to yourself. The keeper is the final word in every argument, the arbiter of every broken rule, and the first to grab a heavy stick when a brawl begins. You do not challenge their authority. They are an encyclopedia of secrets. Who is in debt? Who is having a secret relationship? Who arrived in town with a fake name? Need information? Offer the keeper a favor. Need protection? Sit close to them. Need a favor? Hope you didn't cause a mess last week. Some keepers have a young assistant, a son, a daughter, or an orphan they have taken in. This person is tasked with carrying barrels twice their size, mopping floors, and doing their best not to get stepped on. The assistant is a small cog in a large machine. So while the tavern may seem like a place of total disorder, it is a delicate ecosystem. At its center, commanding it all like a king in a stained apron, stands the one person who keeps the drinks flowing and the place from descending into utter chaos, the keeper.
You finally settle onto a creaking bench, dodging elbows and spilled food. Your throat is dry, your boots are damp, and it's time for your main reward, a drink. But don't expect a menu of fine spirits or a clean cup. Your choices are limited, lukewarm, and potentially dangerous. The most common drink is ale. It is unfiltered, unpasteurized, and brewed in a back room where a dog might sleep. It is thick, cloudy, and often comes with unidentifiable bits of grain, yeast, or possibly a piece of the last patron's beard. It's never cold because there is no ice. You don't ask how long it's been sitting in the barrel. You just drink and hope. Next, there is fermented honey. It sounds like something from a storybook, and in a way, it is. It is sweet, strong, and sometimes volatile. If the keeper made it, it might be delicious. If not, it may taste of regret and something else. It is usually served to merchants, celebration guests, or the rare storyteller who only accepts payment in liquid form.
Then there's apple cider. Made from apples that were either freshly picked or left on the ground for too long. It is sharp, tangy, and served in cracked mugs that might be used for soup the next day. This is the drink of choice in regions where fruit grows abundantly, or for those who need a drink strong enough to forget the person sitting next to them. Wine is an option, but unless you are in a wealthy city or there are nobles in town, it is often watered down, sour, and served with a side of derision. Quality wine is reserved for the wealthy and the well-connected. And water, that is a risky choice because it is often filled with invisible dangers. Boiling water requires fuel, and clean sources are rare.
That's why even young children drink ale. It's not for the effects, but for the assurance of not getting sick. You drink from a cup made of wood or clay. You raise the mug, smell it, and take a sip. It's warm, bitter, and somehow perfect. Because in this place, if it's wet and won't kill you immediately, it's a fine drink. You have survived the drink, barely. Now your stomach grumbles, reminding you that you haven't eaten since dawn, and your last meal was not substantial. It is time to eat, but don't get your hopes up. You don't order food. You ask what is available, and hope it's hot and not a total mystery.
The staple of the table is usually a thick stew made from whatever grains, vegetables, and questionable meat were on hand that day. It has been cooking in the same pot for days, with new ingredients added daily and nothing removed. It is less a meal and more a culinary timeline. If meat is involved, it is likely small game or a lost domestic fowl. If it is from the wild, it might be delicious or it might be aged beyond reason. Your bowl is made of wood or clay, and your spoon is either your own or your fingers. Eating is a do-it-yourself affair. Napkins are non-existent. Bread is also available. It is tough, dark, and heavy, more of a tool than a food. If it's soft, it was baked today. If it's hard, it was baked last week. Either way, it goes well with the strong cheese that seems to have a personality of its own. Sometimes there is salted fish or pickled vegetables. Occasionally, a special is offered, which just means there was a surplus of one item. The flavor is optional, and the texture is a surprise. Still, in the flickering firelight, with the noise all around and the warmth of food in your hands, it's not bad. It is filling and hot. And if you don't think too hard about what is floating in your bowl, it might even be comforting. You're not here for a gourmet experience. You're here to eat to survive. Once you've found your seat, you start to notice the real entertainment, the people. The tavern is the original community center, loud, chaotic, and fully committed to oversharing. To your left, a red-faced farmer is deep into his fourth drink, retelling the same story about a strange occurrence on his land. He slaps your shoulder mid-sentence, as if you are a lifelong friend. In a distant, shadowed corner, a cloaked figure sips their drink slowly. They could be a recluse, a fugitive, or simply someone who is truly uncomfortable with eye contact. You know better to approach them unless you want to find out what happens behind the stables. Near the roaring fire, a warrior in dented armor spins a tale of battle, mentioning mythical beasts and a speaking blade. The story is clearly a fabrication, but no one cares. His cup is full, and his audience is laughing. A merchant, loud and glistening with sweat, yells out grain prices that no one asked for, pulling gold coins from his pouch in a way that screams for a midnight robbery. At a crooked table, two locals play a game of chance. One is a clear cheat, and the other knows it, but lets it happen, saving the confrontation for when his drink runs out. In the corner, a lone storyteller strums a lute.
his voice cracking on a high note of a love song that sounds suspiciously like it was just improvised. No one complains. The narrator is clothed and in tune, which is already an improvement over last night's entertainment.
Women move through the crowd. Some are staff. Others are conducting their own business. They are sharp-eyed, confident, and not to be trifled with. They will flirt, laugh, or knock your teeth out, depending on your attitude. Young children occasionally dart between legs, snatching leftover bread or stray coins. No one stops them. It's just part of the nightly rhythm. Everyone is watching, drinking, and plotting, all while pretending not to notice the man who has passed out under a table. This place is not just for food and drink. It is a living, breathing stage. The real soundtrack is not a song. It is a symphony of chaos. It begins with the clinking of mugs, dozens of them, slamming against the wood in celebration, negotiation, or drunken accidents. Some cling cheerily, others shatter, and both are met with cheers. Then comes the laughter, loud, deep belly laughs that sound like a wild animal. A merchant chuckles at his own joke, a traveler giggles at the word stew, and someone else cackles whenever the word goose is mentioned. You learn quickly not to ask.
Voices layer over one another, each one trying to be the loudest. There are arguments, stories, shouting about taxes, and at least one person misquoting an old tale to win a bet. The keeper yells orders. A maid shouts at a patron. Someone keeps repeating another round like a battle cry. And in the corner, the storyteller, with a barely tuned instrument, plays the same 4 chords on a loop, occasionally bursting into verses about lost love or brave travelers. No one really pays attention unless he starts singing about someone in the room. Then things get very interesting or very dangerous. Someone spills a drink. Someone lets out a thunderous burp that makes the rafters tremble. Someone else falls off a bench and keeps talking from the floor as if it was their intention. In the background, dogs bark and a goat bleats. You don't know why a goat is there. Chairs scrape across the floor like thunder in a wooden cave. It's not peaceful, but it is oddly rhythmic. Occasionally, the room goes silent, not by choice, just a sudden lull. It lasts for exactly 3 seconds. Then someone lets out a laugh, and the noise returns. This isn't background noise. It is the tavern's heartbeat, raw, loud, and alive. If you listen closely, it all starts to make sense. A harmony is born from disorder. And like the rest of the tavern, it only gets louder the longer you stay. As the night deepens, the tavern becomes a medieval hall of games, but without the rules and with more yelling. Gambling is the sport of the evening, and everyone plays, from hardened warriors to young boys with borrowed dice. There's no dealer, no regulation, just a warped wooden table, a handful of coins, and the high chance of someone losing their dignity. Dice are the game of choice, carved from bone, wood, or whatever was at hand. They clatter across tabletops, each toss met with cheers, groans, and accusations of treachery. No one trusts the dice, but everyone uses them. Then there are cards, if you are in a more cultured part of town. Thick, hand-painted, worn at the edges, and always missing a few. The rules change depending on who is explaining them. Sometimes you are trying to get the highest number, other times you are matching symbols or just making it up as you go. It's like a card game, but with more aggressive gestures. Bets range from money to mugs to livestock. Yes, someone is betting their goat, another their boots, and someone else their freedom for the night. You find out later, he lost. The regulars are smooth. They shuffle quickly and smile a little too wide. Cheating is part of the game. A hidden die, a marked card, or a mysterious cough when a lucky player leans in. If you win big, you buy a round or risk getting into trouble. If you lose badly, you just smile and pretend it was intentional while slowly pushing your chair toward the door. Side games erupt too. Arm wrestling and the classic who can drink the most without falling over. The winner earns applause. The loser earns a night under the table and a headache that will last until the next market day. The energy is addictive. Luck is not just a game. It is a wager with your purse, your pride, and possibly your pants. As the night deepens, a new kind of performance takes the floor. One made of words, music, and confident nonsense. This is storytelling, the old way.
A storyteller clears his throat in a far corner, gently plucking a lute with strings that groan like an old door. He is missing a few teeth, but not an ounce of confidence. With a dramatic flourish, he begins a ballad of heartbreak and bravery. It is a story about a knight who fell in love with a mythical sea creature and drowned while reciting poetry. No one believes him, but everyone listens. Here, the truth is optional. Entertainment is everything. Around the tables, others join in. Not professional storytellers, but regular patrons with liquid courage and a tale to tell. One man swears he once wrestled a wild beast and lived to tell the tale. Another claims to have seen a sorcerer turn a cow into a goat. A third insists he is distantly related to an ancient king. Every story begins with, "You won't believe this," but, and they are right. You don't, but you want to. Exaggerations become legends. Misfortunes become myths. Someone tells a joke so terrible it becomes funny again. Another recites a poem, likely stolen from an old manuscript. The room responds with applause, hoots, or hurled pieces of bread, depending on the quality of the performance. If you're lucky, a traveling storyteller might be passing through. These professionals move from town to town, exchanging songs for coins, meals, and a place to sleep. Their songs are polished, their tales long, and their ability to rile up a crowd is dangerous. But even they know the golden rule of tavern tales. Never let facts ruin a good story. In this smoke-filled room, with the fire crackling and mugs clinking, storytelling is not just entertainment. It is a tradition. It is how you make friends, enemies, and the occasional lifelong drinking companion. By midnight, Half the tavern is reenacting the story of a one-legged warrior who fought off 6 bandits with a ladle. You laugh, you cheer, and you forget it's all made up. Because here, every liar is a legend, as long as the story is good enough. As the night deepens, a change comes over the room, a kind of tipsy bravado. The storyteller is halfway through his 3rd song about unfaithful lovers, and suddenly everyone feels romantic. Welcome to Old World Flirting. Subtlety has left the building. It starts with a lingering glance through a haze of fermented honey. A man with 2 remaining teeth leans across a bench and slurs, "My lady, your beauty burns brighter than the fireplace." She responds by throwing a bread crust at his head. The room cheers. Others try their luck more gently, offering a fresh drink or a clumsy compliment. A man tries to help a woman with her bowl of stew, but it still spills. If you are a woman in this place, you are likely used to fending off at least 3 would-be poets and 1 man who tries to impress you by balancing a knife on his nose. Sometimes it works. Usually it ends with a black eye or an empty purse.
For those truly seeking companionship, taverns offer more than simple flirtation. Certain individuals work the room with practiced ease, knowing who has money and who will pass out before reaching the stairs. Transactions are discreet, but the implications are clear. Jealousy is a powerful force here. Nothing starts a fight faster than a stolen glance, a wandering hand, or a person catching their partner laughing a little too loudly at the storyteller's joke. Tables are overturned, mugs become weapons, a bench is broken in half, and yet somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, genuine connections form. A shy daughter of a baker and a traveling stone carver laugh over a shared stew. 2 drunk farmers bond over a mutual hatred of a certain crop. 2 strangers find a bond that survives in even the rowdiest corners. In this place, romance is a mix of charm, chance, and not falling face first into your bowl. You might win a heart, or you might earn a slap. Either way, you will remember it, or at least hear about it the next morning. It was bound to happen. Maybe someone spilled a drink. Maybe someone accused someone else of cheating at a game. Maybe 2 people claimed the same bench and neither would back down. Or maybe someone said something about someone else's mother. It does not really matter. Suddenly, the entire place turns on a dime. A stool flies through the air. A mug crashes to the floor. Someone yells, "Hold my bread!" and launches themselves over a bench with the grace of a drunken projectile. No one is surprised. In fact, most people don't even stop drinking. A brawl in this era is not rare, it is expected. It is practically a planned event. And while it sounds terrifying, it's usually more comedic than deadly. People swing wildly and miss, trip and fall into someone's dinner. Hair is pulled, beards are grabbed, and shirts are torn. The tavern keeper roars like a general on a battlefield, holding a ladle in one hand and a club in the other. Occasionally, someone joins the fight with no idea why. They just see the action and jump in fists first. Others place informal bets,
cheer or slide their mugs out of the splash zone. Weapons are rare. Most people know that pulling a blade in a tavern can turn a casual brawl into a full-blown legend, and no one wants to be banned from the only place that serves hot food and warm ale. Eventually, someone hits the floor and stays there. Someone else stumbles into a wall and decides it's a good place to sit and rethink their life. The fight dies out like a candle, suddenly and without ceremony. And here's the strange part. Once it's over, it's over. The combatants are separated, mugs are refilled, someone starts a song, and within 10 minutes everyone is laughing again, including the person with the bleeding nose. There are no grudges or lawsuits, just bruises, stories, and maybe a new nickname like One-Eyed Aaron or Benchbreaker Ben. In this tavern, a good fight is just part of a good night. Messy, ridiculous, and strangely bonding. So the brawl is over. The storyteller has passed out mid-ballad, and your stomach is full of mystery stew and slightly fermented cider. It's time to sleep, or at least attempt to. But don't expect a feather bed and scented linen. If the tavern offers lodging, it's likely a creaky staircase away. Upstairs, past slanted floors and beams low enough to test the strength of your skull, the rooms are small, cold, and absolutely shared. Privacy doesn't exist. You are sleeping shoulder to shoulder with strangers. Some snore like ancient instruments. Others mutter loudly in languages you have never heard. Your bed is a straw-stuffed mattress, thin, lumpy, and likely crawling with what people of this time affectionately called companions. You lie down fully clothed, boots on, a dagger under your pillow, not for comfort, but for defense. Blankets are shared, and so are smells. If someone ate garlic earlier, and someone always has, it will become an intimate part of your dreams. If you are too poor or too drunk for a room, you sleep downstairs on a bench, under a table, or in a corner by the hearth, curled up next to a dog that may or may not belong to the tavern. You will be stepped on, probably sneezed on, and perhaps used as a footrest. The tavern never truly becomes quiet. Even after the last mug is drained and the last fight is patched up, there is always someone muttering in their sleep, a log popping in the fire, or a distant noise echoing through the rafters. And yet somehow you drift off. It is not comfortable, and it is not clean, but it is safe enough. The flyer keeps the worst of the cold away. The tavern keeper keeps watch with one eye open and a club in hand, and the noise becomes its own kind of lullaby, familiar, human, and alive. You will wake with a sore neck, a dry mouth, and a questionably acquired bruise. But for a few hours you have slept in the company of travelers, rogues, farmers, and fools. No kings, no silence, just snores, straw, and the faint hope that your boots are still there in the morning. Dawn creeps in like an uninvited guest, sliding pale light through cracks in the shutters and poking at your eyelids with merciless persistence. The tavern has changed overnight.
It's not quieter exactly, but quieter in a defeated sort of way. You open one eye, someone's boot is on your chest, someone else is mumbling in their sleep about taxes on livestock. The storyteller is snoring under a table, clutching his lute like a lover. A chicken hops across the floor, pecking at yesterday's bread crusts. No one questions where it came from. The fire has died down, leaving the room cold and smoky. A few patrons begin to stir, groaning like wounded warriors from battles fought entirely inside their own skulls. One man sits up, looks around the dim room, and lies back down, having decided that today isn't worth facing. The keeper, of course, is already awake, clattering mugs, sweeping straw into new piles, and reheating something in a pot that smells both inviting and slightly dangerous. They shoot a look at the bodies on the floor before banging a ladle against a mug like a gong from a nightmare. Get up or get out is your new alarm clock. There is no breakfast buffet. If you're lucky, the pottage is still warm and even thicker than last night. The bread is rewarmed, the ale is watered down, and no one has the energy to complain. Some patrons simply dunk their heads in a barrel of rainwater outside and call it a day. You check your pouch. 2 coins and a button. Better than expected. Your boots are still there, too. One has a bite mark, but they are yours, which is a victory. A few new faces trickle in. Early risers, travelers, workers in need of a drink before dealing with livestock, taxes, or, even worse, their neighbors. The tavern begins to stir again, like a sleeping beast. Someone starts retelling a story from last night. It has already changed, of course. Now there were 2 fights, and the song they sang conjured a shadow. Everyone nods as if it was the absolute truth. The night was a storm of chaos. The morning is a foggy, grimy cloud of regret. Yet you smile, because somehow you survived it. You felt the sweat, the smoke, and the sticky ale under your boots. You've endured the shouting, the flirting, the pottage, and possibly a flying bench. And through it all, one thing has become clear. The tavern was not just a drinking hall. It was the beating heart of the community. In a world without modern communication, this place was a hub where information was exchanged. A merchant from the coast could share news from a foreign port. A guard could describe a distant conflict. A storyteller could sing songs that brought people together, even if the lyrics changed every night. This was a place of connection. Farmers drank beside artisans. Pilgrims shared bread with thieves. Strangers became friends, or at least drinking buddies. Social classes blurred, alliances were formed, and rivalries were settled or fueled further, depending on how the dice rolled. The tavern was also a place of business. Deals were struck and contracts were made over splinters and spilled cider. It was a courtroom, a place of secrets, and a theater stage all at once. You could find a job, lose your purse, get married, or start a feud in a single evening. And it offered something more, too. Something you couldn't buy at the market. It was a release from the cold, from the labor, from the endless seriousness of life. For a few hours, you could sit by a fire, hear a bad joke, sing a worse song, and forget how hard the outside world was. Even if the ale was warm and the bed was itchy, the tavern gave you a sense of being alive among the living. and in an era where everything from sickness to war could take you without warning, that was a crucial thing. So when you stepped into this tavern, you weren't just buying a drink. You were buying belonging, a story, and maybe a place to sleep where the fire still burned. Long before cafes and pubs, there was the tavern. Loud, dirty, honest, and absolutely unforgettable. Before she became the most iconic figure of a bygone civilization, immortalized in a stone bust with high cheekbones and a gaze of serene confidence, Anya was a woman shrouded in mystery. Her name, which means the beautiful one has come, is widely known, but no one knows where she came from. Some believe she was the daughter of a powerful official, perhaps even the sister of the ruler. Others argue she was a foreign princess sent to the land in a political arrangement. Her origins are debated, but her influence is undeniable. Anya appears in the historical record like a flash of lightning, sudden, brilliant, and transformative. She enters the ruler's life not as a passive queen, but as an equal partner in a reign that would shake their society to its core. Together, they would dismantle centuries of tradition, discard the many ancient spirits, and elevate a single cosmic force as the only true source of all life. It was a radical, almost impossible move. Anya was not just observing from the throne. She was leading ceremonies and making offerings. She was even depicted in art as a warrior, a role typically reserved for male rulers. Unlike other queens who were in the background, Anya was ever present. She appears in more artwork from this period than even the ruler himself. In these depictions, she is not a follower. She stands tall, sometimes larger than life, literally holding power in her hands. And in a society where rulers were seen as living forces of nature, her closeness to the main leader, both in purpose and political action, suggested something more. Perhaps she was not just a queen. Perhaps she was a co-ruler. But this rise was not without tension. The land was not ready for the upheaval. The old scholars resented the loss of their ancient knowledge and their temples. The capital was moved to a new city, cutting ties with the old ways. And through it all, Anya was there, her figure etched into stone walls, her name celebrated in hymns to the sun. Yet for all her visibility in life, her death is a complete disappearance. No tomb, no body, no confirmed end. Just silence. It's as if history, after showcasing her brilliance, suddenly chose to look away. And that, perhaps, is where her legend truly begins. To understand Anya's rise, you must first meet the man who changed everything, her husband, the great ruler. He wasn't born with that name. He was originally a prince in line to follow a 1,000-year legacy of ancient traditions. But something changed within him. Some call it a moment of clarity. Others say it was madness. When he became king, he turned his back on the traditional forces and declared a new truth, There was only one cosmic power worth acknowledging, the sun itself. This was not just a spiritual shift, it was an earthquake that cracked the foundation of their civilization. Imagine a society built around ancient lore, scholars, and rituals being told overnight that their old ways were false. The ruler didn't just promote a new idea, he enforced it. The old sacred halls were shut down. The names of the old deities were chiseled off monuments. Entire cities were abandoned. In their place, the ruler built something new, a city dedicated solely to the sun, where the cosmic force would rise directly between the cliffs and bathe the city in sacred light.
And through it all, Anja stood at his side,
Not as a silent companion, but as a full participant. In the art of the period, she is shown revering the sun with the same devotion as her husband. Their daughters are often depicted with them, their heads tilted toward the radiant sun. It was a family portrait unlike anything in their history, before or since. Even the style of the art changed. No longer stiff and formal, but loose, exaggerated, and sometimes intimate. The king and queen are shown kissing, playing with their children, and praying in soft robes beneath the sun. Anja was everywhere in this new world. At times, she even overshadowed her husband. Some historians believe she held real political power, perhaps even acting as co-ruler. There are inscriptions that refer to her by a new name, one some believe she used when she began to rule in her own right. It is unclear if the ruler shared the throne out of love or necessity, but one thing is clear. Without Anja, this transformation might not have lasted as long as it did. But revolutions are fragile. The old forces do not take kindly to being replaced, and the people were quietly watching, waiting for the old order to return. At the height of her influence, Anja had become more than a queen. She had become an icon, not just of beauty, but of divine strength and royal power. The civilization had seen great queens before, but Anja's presence felt different. She wasn't ruling from the shadows or taking power through conflict. She was reshaping the spiritual and cultural fabric of her civilization beside her husband in real time as a living force. She bore the ruler 6 daughters, all of whom were frequently depicted in family scenes beneath the sun's rays. Curiously, no sons were ever confirmed. In a kingdom obsessed with lineage, this was a historical mystery. Was it fate, or was something else at play? What is certain is that motherhood was central to her image. In art, Anja is portrayed cradling her children, their tiny arms reaching up to touch her cheeks. These aren't stiff, lifeless portraits. These are living moments carved in stone, intimate, emotional, and radiant. In an age where rulers were often distant, Anja's portrayal as a nurturing mother humanized their divine nature. Yet there was another side to her image, one far more powerful. In multiple depictions, Anja wears the crown usually reserved for male rulers. She is shown as a warrior, riding chariots and making offerings without her husband beside her. These were not symbolic gestures. This was a queen performing the sacred duties of a king. It suggests a quiet but radical truth. Anya may have been preparing for something more than a partnership. She may have been preparing to rule.
Whispers in history suggest that after the ruler's health began to decline, Anya took on more governing responsibilities. But this is where the record begins to fade. In the final years of his reign, she vanishes from the public eye. There are no grand farewells, no funeral inscriptions, no confirmed burial. Did she die young? Did she fall from power? Or was she about to become something even greater than a queen? Something that history tried and failed to erase. One day, Anya was everywhere, etched into walls, celebrated in hymns, ruling alongside a revolutionary leader. And then, like a breath on the desert wind, she vanished. No one had ever been so visible in the culture. Yet around year 12 of the ruler's 17-year reign, the records grow eerily silent. Her name disappears from the inscriptions. Her image fades from the art. No tomb, no death announcement, no mourning scene. For a woman so central to her civilization's upheaval, her absence is more than strange. It's a black hole in history. So what happened to her? One theory suggests the simplest answer. She passed away. Giving birth was risky, even for royalty. Anya's second daughter also disappears from records around this time, possibly indicating a dual tragedy. A mother and daughter lost in the same dark moment. But if that were true, why no elaborate funeral, no tribute, no monument? This was a woman revered as a living force of nature. A quiet death does not fit the script.
Others propose something far more political. Perhaps Anya fell from favor. Maybe the tides turned within the court. The ruler, increasingly isolated, could have sidelined her, possibly in favor of another companion. Some suggest an enigmatic figure who appears briefly in the historical record may have replaced her. Was this a male heir, a half-brother, or was it Anya herself under a new name? That's the most thrilling theory, that Anya didn't disappear at all. She transformed. Evidence suggests someone with a name similar to her new title ruled in the final years of the ruler's reign. This individual used feminine grammar in inscriptions and even referred to the ruler as her beloved partner. Could this have been Anya, crowned as the leader in her own right? If so, she would have joined the rarest ranks in their history, a female king. But even this theory dissolves in the sand. This individual's reign ends abruptly. And then comes a more familiar name, the young king, a boy who would reverse his parents' reforms and restore the old ways. If Anya did reign alone, it was short-lived. And if she was the ghost queen, she was visible only in hints, half-carved symbols and broken relics, a puzzle missing its centerpiece. And so, as suddenly as she arrived, the most powerful woman of her time disappears. But her legend was just beginning to take shape.
As the dust of the abandoned city began to settle, a new figure emerged. A boy king, barely old enough to hold a scepter. His name was to be the most famous in the world, not for what he did in life, but for the priceless artifacts found in his untouched resting place. But what matters here is this: who was his mother? The records are frustratingly silent. His father was almost certainly the great ruler, but the identity of his mother remains shrouded in confusion. Some scholars argue that Anya was his stepmother. Others speculate she may have been his biological mother, pointing to art and timing that seems to place him as a young child during her final public appearances. If Anya truly bore him, it would make sense. His early reign was clearly guided by someone with a steady hand, and his decisions to reverse his father's transformation may not have been entirely his own. And that's where the intrigue deepens. Who was steering the ship during the young king's fragile reign? The boy was only about 9 when he took the throne. A child cannot restore an empire alone. Someone was behind the scenes, someone experienced in court politics, culture, and public symbolism. Could it have been Anya ruling from the shadows? Or was it her possible father, the high priest? Or perhaps both, working together to erase the chaos and return the society to its old ways?
One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from a golden shrine found in the young king's tomb. It shows a woman anointing the boy, a woman with features eerily similar to Anya. If that was her, it means she may not have vanished at all, but stayed at the heart of power in a more discreet form. Still, without a named tomb or a confirmed body, we are left with only fragments. If she did guide the young king, her fingerprints are everywhere, but her name is gone, scrubbed from monuments and left out of the historical record, as though someone tried to erase the memory of a woman who once ruled like a god. And yet, the irony is rich. The young king's fame would resurrect her image, because in searching for his story, the world stumbled upon hers. For someone who stood at the center of her culture's most radical era, as a queen, a visionary, and a possible ruler in her own right, Anya left behind no confirmed tomb. Not a single monument bears the symbols of her final journey. No sarcophagus, no funerary mask, no inscription whispering her last words. It's as though she evaporated. This absence has haunted scholars for over a century. In a culture obsessed with the journey to the other side, how could one of the most powerful women in history be lost? Theories abound. One possibility is that her remains were buried quickly and without a proper ceremony in the final years of the old era. Perhaps her radical life made her dangerous in the eyes of the new regime. Her resting place may have been dismantled, her name erased as part of a larger effort to wipe out the memory of the great leader's controversial ideas. After all, the return to traditional ways was swift, and erasing the past was a common practice. Another, more intriguing theory suggests her resting place was never truly lost. It was simply misidentified, or is still hidden. Some researchers believe she lies within a secret area of the main burial grounds, concealed behind the walls of the young king's tomb. In 2015, scans of the famous tomb showed a possible hidden room. Could
A Kenya have been buried just inches away, sealed off and forgotten beneath layers of history and gold? This idea captivated the world's imagination. A powerful figure sleeping just out of reach. Researchers held their breath, but further scans were inconclusive. Excavations slowed, funding dried up, and once again, Kenya retreated into a world of myth. Yet her absence is a powerful presence. We have her images, dozens, perhaps hundreds, captured in stone and pigment. Her famous sculpture, now in Berlin, still gazes with a timeless grace, as if she knows something we don't, as if she's waiting. Every year new searches continue, and every year the whispers stir. Could a sealed chamber finally give up her secrets? Or is she destined to remain a mystery, an unfinished sentence in the story of her civilization? If history buried her, it didn't succeed for long, because the search for a Kenya never truly stopped. It only deepened.
If her final resting place was never found, and her body never identified, why do we still remember Anya? The answer sits behind a museum glass, a painted limestone sculpture that has captivated the world since its discovery. The bust of Anya. She gazes forward with poise and serenity. Her long neck is graceful. Her blue crown is distinct, and her features are so refined they almost feel modern. One eye is unfinished, perhaps intentionally, or perhaps a forgotten detail. Yet even incomplete, she is timeless and unforgettable. The bust was discovered by a German researcher in the ruins of an ancient sculptor's studio. When he brushed away the dust and revealed her face, he knew instantly what he had found. He wrote in his diary, "No use describing it, you have to see it." And once the world did, Anya became not just a historical figure, but a global symbol of beauty, power, and ancient mystery. But even her sculpture is not without controversy. It was acquired during a time of loose historical laws, and her homeland has been requesting its return for decades. To them, she belongs at home, in the land where she once stood. But the museum has refused, claiming its fragility makes it unsafe to travel. Others say it is about prestige. Anya brings in crowds. She is their most famous exhibit. Yet her presence, wherever she may be, has changed how the world sees ancient women. Her bust captures something regal, assertive, almost challenging. She looks like someone who held secrets, made decisions, and changed the course of an empire. And she did. It's remarkable how a single sculpture can resurrect someone lost to time. We may never find her tomb. We may never know how she passed away. But through this bust, Anya achieved something extraordinary. She became immortal, not in gold, but in human memory. The face may be still, but the story it tells continues to speak louder than ever across the centuries.
Anya's story lives somewhere between stone and silence, between what we know and what we want to believe. Few figures in ancient history have inspired such relentless fascination and profound mystery. She is a paradox, one of the most documented women of her time, and yet still largely unknowable. Over the centuries, she has been imagined as many things. To some, she was a living force of nature, the embodiment of a new idea. To others, she was a political genius, a power behind the throne, or maybe even the throne itself. Some have portrayed her as a tragic figure, lost in the sands of change. Others paint her as ambitious and calculating, navigating a collapsing world with grace and skill. But what do we truly know? We know she was more than a royal partner. Her imagery rivals that of kings. Her presence during rituals, ceremonies, and even scenes of conflict reveals a woman not just beside power, but wielding it. In a world controlled by men, she carved out her own space, not through rebellion, but through presence, poise, and a command of the visual and symbolic language of her time. We know she was central to one of history's boldest shifts. While the ruler may have envisioned a single-source cosmic idea, it was Anya who embodied it. She was the human face of a divine ideal, the bridge between the forces above and the people below. She didn't just serve, she was a living symbol. And we know that after her disappearance, her memory was almost erased. The reaction against the ruler's regime swept her name into oblivion. Her statues were smashed. Her inscriptions were defaced. Her role in history was intentionally buried. Yet here we are, thousands of years later, still whispering her name. Why? Because a myth has a way of surviving where facts cannot. Because when a woman becomes both an icon and a mystery, she slips into a place where time can't reach her. Because sometimes the questions echo louder than the answers. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how Anya wanted it. To be remembered, not explained. To be admired, not contained. To live forever as not a woman in one tomb, but as a legend of endless speculation. More than 3 millennia have passed since Anya last walked beneath the sun, yet her shadow still stretches across our world, etched in museum glass, whispered through academic halls, and displayed in stories and films. Unlike most historical figures, she hasn't faded into the past. If anything, she grows larger with time. There's something irresistible about her, not just the beauty. We've seen beauty before. It's the mystery. The intentional blank spaces in her life feel like a challenge, as if she is daring us to try and understand her, knowing full well we never truly will. In that way, she has become something more than a historical figure. She has become an archetype. Every generation reinterprets Anya in its own image. In an earlier century, she was an exotic queen, mysterious and passive. In the modern era, she became a symbol of female power, an ancient ruler lost to the past. In current media, she is a style icon, a leader, a political player, and even a possible ruler in her own right. She has lived 1,000 second lives, not through facts, but through imagination. But perhaps that is the most fitting of all. In her time, immortality wasn't just about the body. It was about memory. If your name was spoken, your image seen, your story retold, you lived on. Anya, whether by design or by chance, has achieved that. Her name is spoken across continents. Her face is one of the most recognized in human history. Her story, though fractured, still commands attention. So in a way, her greatest legacy wasn't carved into a tomb. It was this enduring curiosity. She left behind a perfect mystery, a life half seen, half erased, and wholly unforgettable. And perhaps that was her final act of power, not just to rule an empire, but to become timeless. Anya, the beautiful one, never truly left. She remains here in our questions and our wonder, in our need to remember the people history tried to forget. She lives not in gold or glory, but in the eternal act of being searched for. And what is more immortal than that? In a land where the clouds hang low and the wind hums through bamboo groves, a dragon lies coiled. But it is no myth, no fire-breathing beast of legend. This dragon is made of earth and stone, shaped by centuries of patient hands and a singular vision. It is the vast terraced landscape known to locals as the dragon's backbone, and its curves ripple across the mountainside like scales shimmering with water, rice, and ancient pride. From a distance, the terraces resemble a sleeping creature. Hills ripple with rhythmic precision, each layer rising and falling like the sinew of a living form. But step closer, and you will find something even more alive. Water flows in soft whispers along carefully dug channels. Seedlings flutter in the breeze, and at dawn the morning mist drapes the landscape like a breath rising from the dragon's nostrils. These terraces weren't built in haste. Their story began over 700 years ago, when the local people, with deep ties to the mountains, chose to tame the slopes rather than abandon them. Flat land was scarce, modern tools were non-existent, and so they looked at the mountain and asked a simple question: how do we feed ourselves here? The answer took generations. Armed with little more than stone tools and bamboo baskets, they carved the hills inch by inch, year by year. With each level built, they not only shaped the land, they taught it to live with them. Rainfall became a resource. The slope became a place of life. Rice, the staple of existence, began to grow where gravity once ruled. Over time, the terraces began to resemble a dragon at rest, strong, eternal, and sacred. This was more than agriculture. It was a silent pact between humans and nature. No part of the mountain was wasted, and no part was forced to bend violently. Instead, the people worked with the earth, shaping it in curves and swells, listening to the wind and following the water. Today, the dragon's backbone still feeds entire villages. But more than that, it reminds us what patience can build. In a world that races forward, here lies a dragon that was never chased, only carved, layer by layer, dream by dream. To walk among these terraces is to step into a world carved by persistence. There is no illusion here, no machine tracks, no modern survey markers. What stretches across these mountains are the fingerprints of human endurance. Every curve, every slope, every drop of water has been carefully arranged, stone by stone, by hands that knew the pulse of the land. Centuries ago, when the first people looked upon these steep and unforgiving hillsides, they did not see obstacles, they saw opportunity. The fertile valleys were already taken, already sown. But up here, amid the rugged peaks, there was a possibility, if only they could make the earth listen. With no heavy tools, they began with wooden shovels, stone hoes, and baskets of mud and rubble carried on backs worn by time. Slowly, terraces began to form, horizontal veins across the mountain, held in place by hand-stacked stone walls. These weren't random cuts into the slope.
They were calculated. Each level had to be perfectly balanced, not only to hold water, but to carry it from one tier to the next without waste. One miscalculation could cause an entire section to collapse. If it was too steep, the water would rush. If too flat, it would stagnate. So they measured not with rulers, but with generations of intuition. Children learned from their elders. Elders watched the seasons, and the mountain, in time, gave in, not with surrender, but with trust. The result is a landscape that defies nature by flowing with it. From the valley base to the cloud-kissed peaks, these terraces rise like a spiral staircase to the sky. They mirror the topography with elegance, almost as if the mountain grew them itself. But the mountain did not shape these curves. Humans did. With no engines, no concrete, no architectural degrees, just time, trial and error, and the belief that land, no matter how steep, can be made to serve life. Today, the terraces remain functional, still farmed, still repaired, and still respected. There are no bulldozers, no shortcuts. The old ways survive because they proved something rare, that tradition, when rooted deep enough, can outlast any storm. If the dragon's backbone is muscle and bone, then water is its blood. It flows quietly, without pumps or engines, tracing ancient channels that slip from mountaintop springs into every terrace below. This hydraulic choreography is no accident. It is the secret life of the terraces, the reason they have endured for centuries. At the top of the mountain, rainwater and natural springs are caught in narrow ditches and canals. From there, gravity becomes the farmer's silent ally. The water descends through terrace after terrace, pooling gently in each field before spilling into the next. This design, fluid and seamless, ensures that every patch of rice receives exactly what it needs. There are no valves, no switches. Control lies in subtle gates made of stone or wood, adjusted by hand and habit. If one terrace overflows, it could flood the next. If one leaks, a drought may follow. And so the villagers, guardians of this delicate system, walk the ridges daily, checking, adjusting, and listening to the sound of the flow. It's less like farming and more like playing an instrument.
But the water does more than feed rice. It mirrors the sky. In spring, when the terraces are first flooded, the fields turn to glass. They reflect the clouds, the sun, and even the stars on a clear night. Visitors often describe the sight as surreal, like the mountain has become a living mirror, reflecting both heaven and earth.
Then comes summer. The water thickens with stalks of green. The reflection fades, replaced by movement, rippling rice plants swaying in the wind like an emerald sea. In autumn, the water glistens through the gold of ripened grain. And in winter, when farming ceases, snow and frost replace the flowing current. The dragon sleeps, but the channels remain, quiet veins awaiting spring. Time moves differently here, not by hours, but by moisture, by the first trickle of mountain water, by the sound of frogs returning, and by the scent of wet soil. The people of this place still measure time in seasons and drops. And so the dragon lives, not in fire and flight, but in ripples of water, pulsing gently through a living masterpiece of stone and soil.
Spring in these mountains begins not with blossoms, but with water. As the snow melts in the higher peaks, streams trickle downward, breathing life into the waiting terraces. The mirror-like fields are ready. The dragon stirs, and the people prepare for the ritual that ties them to every generation before them, planting the first seed. There is no grand announcement, only quiet movement. Farmers, young and old, rise with the mist. They walk barefoot along the narrow ridges, straw hats low over their eyes, baskets balanced on their backs. The air is thick with the scent of soaked soil and mountain wind. The fields, flooded just days earlier, now shimmer like polished jade. This is not a task for machines. It never has been. Each rice seedling grown in nursery beds is transplanted by hand, one by one, line by line. The workers step into the cold water and press the tender stalks into the mud with gentle fingers. It's a rhythm that feels almost sacred. Back bent, arm out, hand press. Repeat. All day, sometimes for weeks. Children follow, splashing in the shallows, mimicking their elders. They learn not from books, but by standing in the water, feeling the resistance of the mud, and learning the spacing by eye. It's how knowledge survives here, lived, not spoken.
Planting is more than labor. It is ceremony. Offerings are made to the mountain spirits. Songs are sung. In some villages, elders scatter the first handful of seedlings as a blessing. Every field planted is a promise to the land, to the ancestors, and to the children yet to come. The pace is unhurried. No one rushes the dragon. No one races the mountain. Instead, the rhythm of planting becomes a meditation, a slow dance of human and nature, of patience and purpose. And as the days pass, green shoots begin to rise from the watery fields like whispers. From this moment forward, the terraces will grow. Not just rice, but hope. Each seed is a prayer. Each row is a quiet defiance against hunger and haste. And so begins the cycle once again, not with noise or fire, but with hands in mud and hearts in the sky. The dragon is awake, the mountain breathes, and the future is planted, one seed at a time.
Scattered along the ridges and nestled in the crooks of the terraces are the heartbeats of the dragon's backbone, villages. These are not just settlements, they are living museums of heritage, where every home, path, and balcony clings to the mountain like a memory that refuses to fade. The houses are built of timber resting on stilts to protect them from the rains and the steepness of the slope. Their rooftops, dark and slanted, mirror the lines of the terraces they overlook. From above, they seem like wooden lanterns floating on waves of green. Inside, life is simple, warm, and deeply communal. Generations share a home. Meals are cooked over wood fires. The smell of rice wine and bamboo smoke drifts into the mountain air. The people here belong to ethnic minorities, each with their own language, customs, and stories. You'll recognize the women of one group instantly. Their long black hair, uncut since childhood, is coiled into elegant shapes on top of their heads. Some let it fall like silk waterfalls when they bathe in the river, a scene so graceful it borders on myth.
Despite modernization creeping up the mountain trails, traditions hold strong. Hand-woven clothes are dyed in indigo. Wooden looms creak in quiet rooms. Music is played on reed pipes and bronze drums during village festivals. Weddings still involve ritual dances. The harvest is still welcomed with song. Hospitality is not a transaction here, it's a reflex. Guests are offered tea brewed from local leaves, rice wine in carved gourds, and stories passed down from elders who remember the mountain before electricity arrived. They speak of dragons in the mist, of ancestors who first carved the hills, and of spirits who still guard the fields. And though tourism now brings visitors from every corner of the world, the rhythm of village life continues, largely undisturbed. The rice still grows, the rituals still mark the seasons, the terraces, like the people, endure, not by resisting change, but by absorbing it, slowly, carefully, like water descending one level at a time. Here, within the dragon's coils, life is not rushed. It flows, it echoes, it remembers. To walk the terraces is to walk through layers of myth. The hills are not just soil and stone. They're alive with stories whispered through bamboo groves and carried on the wind. For the villagers, these mountains are not merely land. They are sacred beings, shaped by ancient powers, guarded by spirits, and inhabited by tales passed down from one generation to the next. The most enduring legend speaks of a sleeping dragon whose body stretches across the ridges. Its spine rises in coils, the very terraces themselves. Locals believe that the curves of the mountain are not man-made, but rather the dragon's scales rising and falling with its breath. When mist rolls in from the valley and covers the fields in white, it's said that the dragon stirs, breathing gently in its sleep. Another tale tells of how the terraces were born from a divine act of generosity.
A long time ago, a powerful being, seeing the hardship of the local people struggling against the steep mountains, decided to help. The being descended to earth and with a giant plow carved the terraces into the mountain, a gift of life-giving land. But the people were not simply given a gift, they were given a responsibility. They had to learn how to tend to the land, how to channel the water, and how to maintain this great gift for future generations. This myth, like many others, serves as a powerful reminder. The terraces are not just a product of human labor. They are a partnership between humanity and nature, a testament to the idea that with patience, reverence, and harmony, even the most challenging landscape can become a place of life. The dragon's backbone, in all its breathtaking beauty, is more than a destination. It is a living story, a reminder that the world's most incredible wonders are often born not from force, but from patience, from the slow, steady work of hands that knew how to listen to the whispers of the wind, the language of water, and the quiet, enduring heart of the earth itself. It is a masterpiece forged from a simple belief that by working with nature, not against it, you can create something truly immortal. And here, in the gentle rhythm of the fields, in the echoing tales of the past, in the steady flow of water from one terrace to the next, the dragon sleeps. It breathes with the seasons and waits for the hands of the next generation to wake it once more.